time on CARM Harm 3!
Karen S. here.
Okay, Matt Slick. There's only one way to solve this. Moon Prism Power! Make up! I am the Moon Man! Yeah! And on behalf of Logic, I shall punish you!
Karen S. here. Before I get started, and because of a certain well-known YouTube personality committing plagiarism, I'd like to reiterate my attribution to Dan Courtney and his book, A Gift from God, How Presuppositionalism Undermines Christianity. The information in his book was invaluable, and I did in fact quote him, and I did show his book as the source, but I wanted to take this time to do it again so it's clear I've given him credit. I couldn't have done this without Dan, and of course, that other Dan, Deconverted Man. Back to the show. Number 4. The laws of logic are transcendent. Number 4.1. The laws of logic are not dependent on space. Number 4.1.1. They do not stop being true dependent on location. If we travel 1,000,000 light years in a direction, the laws of logic are still true. Number 4.2. The laws of logic are not dependent on time. Number 4.2.1. They do not stop being true dependent on time. If we travel 1,000,000,000 years in the future or past, the laws of logic are still true.
Yeah, well, screw relativity, I guess. Einstein must have been wrong. If we went 1,000,000,000 years into the past, things would be a lot different than they are today. Thus, our observation of the way things are would have to change to fit that, and thus the laws of logic would have to reflect the reality that we observe. Additionally, if we didn't have technology, then we're far more limited in the observation of reality, and then what we base our laws of logic on would be then limited. And if we went way into the future, who knows what sort of different cosmic evolution and or biological evolution may occur that will change how things are. But we're not in the real world anymore. We're in Matt Slick's world where nothing makes sense because everything has to be absolute. This is the key cornerstone of his entire tag, not enough quotes in the universe, argument that the laws of logic are absolute. They're not! They're not absolute! Well, whatever.
In a previous video concerning Matt Slick's response to an Iron Chariot's refutation, and in the first CARM Harm video, I've addressed this space-time question. Slick is only describing how the laws of logic are true regardless of location or time. He is not actually showing how they are true beyond space and time, which I thought was what was meant by transcendental. There is almost nothing in this world and even the universe that is unaffected by space and time, including logical absolutes. A bird or a rock cannot logically be anything other than what they are in this universe. Take away time and space, however, and the bird or rock cannot exist. Time is merely a measure of distance or change. Without time, there is no change. Therefore, in an environment without time, everything is everything, and there can be no logic. Now, if the God of Matt Slick is defined as timeless, spaceless, tenseless, and changeless, which it usually is, and existing in another version of time, I believe it's called B-theory time, which is a temporal existence where his God observes time, past, present, and future, all at once, like a gigantic multi-monitor display replay, In other words, a situation where all time has concluded and is contained within that temporality, then Slick has a serious problem explaining how his God can even create the universe, because that requires change, which requires time. William Lane Craig has written various papers about these time problems, which are all special pleading solutions, where another post hoc attribute is added unto God to get around the contradictions. The point being that we could grant the laws of logic are transcendental, but a God would have to be subject to them as well in order to even create a universe. However, since according to precepts like Slick, since God must begin everything and has these extraordinary contradictory attributes, that is not possible. Thank you, Yin Yang Mountain, for your assistance on this. Back to you, deconverted man.
One possible way around this for Matt Slick and others would be to simply assert that God's attributes include absolute laws of logic. So though, yes, of course he's subject to it because it is part of who he is. It's part of the godness that is God. God is subject to its own self, it's limited within itself, although it is unlimited. But we're going to pretend like it's not really unlimited. It's not really limited. See, it makes more sense if you stop trying to figure it out. You see, so it's logically potent. It is the maximum amount of power and ability that is within logical norms. So God can't make itself not exist because God doesn't possess the attribute of making itself not exist. But in all other cases, God has a lot of power, right? And so God has the absolute laws of logic as part of its self-being, and therefore something. Matt Slick doesn't have any sort of mention of this at all on this website, but that would be one potential way to try to get around this problem. Of course, it still doesn't work because you have to make an argument for each of those things. You have to make an argument that the laws of logic are part of God's attributes. You have to make the argument that there's a God. You know, there's a few problems to this without even adding on to the problem of transcendental, which hasn't been given an argument for either.
Number 4.3. The laws of logic are not dependent on people. That is, they are not the product of human thinking. Number 4.3.1. People's minds are different. What one person considers to be absolute may not be what another considers to be absolute. People often contradict each other. Therefore, the laws of logic cannot be the product of human contradictory minds.
And now it's time for Deconverted Man Loses It!
So you see, humans can't agree upon things, thus the rules of monopoly can't possibly be the product of human minds, especially not the Pokemon Gotta Catch 'Em All edition. Therefore, Monopoly is transcendent, as well as Descent, Journey into the Dark, and Super Dungeon Explorer, and then another Descent, more Descent, and let's see, I've got Ruinbound, that's also product of non-human minds, Talisman, all of this, oh yeah, Dungeon Quest, Arkham Horror, all of that, none of that can't be products of human mind because we can't agree on anything. Chess, checkers, backgammon, blackjack, light bulbs. Yeah, light bulbs. Why not? Is it on or off? I don't know. We can't agree on things because we're humans. Language, music, computer programming, HTML, this fan being way too loud. Whether or not I've lost my mind at this point, we can't agree on anything. Therefore, it's all transcendent. Whee! Transcendent! Transcendent!
And now, back to our video. the?
Number 4.3. The laws of logic are not dependent on people. That is, they are not the product of human thinking. Number 4.3.1. People's minds are different. What one person considers to be absolute may not be what another considers to be absolute. People often contradict each other.
Time loop. I feel like I'm in a time loop. I feel like I'm in. Matt Slick, stop repeating yourself. You already made this point. You don't need to make this point again. It was wrong the first time. It's not going to be more right the next time. There's appeals to consequence, personal incredulity, and of course the reductio ad absurdum that I offered. We could not have created chess because we can't agree on the absolute rule. Forget the laws of America. We can't agree on that. We can't agree on anything. It is so stupid. Here's the thing, okay. I'm going to make a game, and I want you all to play the game in the comment section below, okay? I'll say a word, and then you write a word in the comment section that is that is connected in some way to the word I just said, okay? So if I said butter, you could say fly, butterfly, or you could say margarine, or you could say bread, because all of those things are connected. But if you said purple, you're out of the game. You're not playing the game, so you're out. You're excluded from our game. So, you know, I'm just gonna go with butter, and then whoever wants to can play this game, and then the next person can post a response to their thing, and so on and so forth until somebody decides to break the rules. But that person is not playing the game. See, they're not part of the game. I don't know what game they're playing, but it's not our game. So until they decide to play by the rules, they can't play our game. See, that's how it works. So eventually, either they're going to make up their own game and try to get people to follow their game, but why would they when they won't follow our game? Or they're going to be like, you know what, I really want to play this game, so I'll go ahead and subject myself to the rules so that I can play along. You see, it's called human cooperation. Just because we don't agree on every single thing doesn't mean that we can't sit down sometimes and cooperate, or even stand up and cooperate, or lie down and cooperate, or in anywhere cooperate. But Slick, no of the.
Therefore, the laws of logic cannot be the product of human contradictory minds. 4.3.2. If the laws of logic were the product of human minds, they would cease to exist if people ceased to exist, which would mean they would be dependent on human minds. But this cannot be so, per the previous point.
Not only is that a non sequitur, it's also an appeal to consequence. If humans all expired and went extinct, the only place that anything that we have would exist would be in written or recorded format. And unless some intelligent species came along and deciphered our language, it would sit there and eventually rot and decay and be lost to oblivion. Now for a happier note,
So my question is, are these things actual absolutes or not? Because if they are, they would be logically indisputable, and only an illogical mind would dispute them. Example: death is absolute in this world. When a person biologically and physically dies, no one is going to say that person is biologically and physically alive without being seen as contradictory or illogical. Back to you, deconverted man.
the problem that continues to persist is numerous in this quote, not enough quotes in the universe quote, argument that Slick offers. First of all, as a side note, he's not good at making premises. Shorter is usually better. And you could summarize his argument. Premise 1, if laws of logic are absolute, then God exists. Premise 2, the laws of logic are absolute, conclusion, therefore God exists. And then you could defend each of those premises with additional argumentation. But I think that from all I've read of Slick's writings, and it's been far too much, he'd be better served to create essay-style arguments, where he has a thesis statement followed by supporting paragraphs, and discard all this numbering insanity. And he could assert anything he wanted, he could quote anybody he wanted, and all of these things. And if he made it at the start, the thesis statement, something to the effect of, I believe that the laws of logic are absolute, and that this points to God, then I couldn't criticize it. Karen couldn't. We could, but we wouldn't need to, because belief statements are not subject necessarily to logic. We don't care what you believe. That's when you say something is true, then you have the burden of proof. No empirical evidence is offered. There would be no empirical evidence you could offer, because you're talking about something that exists in the brain. You're talking about rules that we created and wrote down. And we can talk to each other about those rules, but nonetheless, those rules don't exist anywhere else. It's not like gravity. It's not like space or time, and there's questions on whether or not time or space are really things or just conveniences. But nonetheless, it's not a thing. The number 1 is a concept. It doesn't really exist in the real world. You couldn't pick up something and say, here's the number 1, even if it looks like a number 1, because it isn't really the number 1. The letter A is similar. Musical notes are similar. These things exist in our brains, but nowhere else. They don't exist in reality. And what Slick is trying to do is say that laws of logic exist as part of reality, which is backwards. Reality exists, and we base logic off of how we understand reality.
Deconverted man. Psi 10 atheists and I are not married. I don't know where you heard that. We're just very close friends. Now, I'd like to marry him, but he wants a prenup, whatever that is. And so, I don't know what to say.
I guess if Karen S. isn't married, then the next logical thing for me to do is to continue to beg her to marry me. Why? It's a good question. I don't have an answer right now. But I'll come up with one in the next video. Hold on. Hey, how's it going? Why? Why? You won't come up with an answer. Oh, yeah, just shut up. Unless and until we have a logically coherent pancake, we must continue to catapult. Wait, what?